Hi everyone, this is Mr Neel Raithatha, also known as the Wax Whisperer. Thank you for joining me in my latest video. This is of a patient who attended with a fungal ear infection, and we call that otomycosis. And you can get two types of ear fungal infections, so two types of otomycosis. You can get Aspergillus niger, which is the most common type of fungal ear infection. Around 70%, I think the figure is, of fungal ear infections are Aspergillus niger. And the other type of fungal infection is Candida. So that's similar to thrush. So young babies, children with thrush on their tongue, for example. That's called Candida. Now, the way you typically differentiate between the two is if you have Aspergillus niger, you have visible fungal spores. They can either be white spores or black spores. In addition, sometimes with Aspergillus niger, you get almost like a woolly cotton wool structure that forms within the ear. So it's like a spider's web. And you will see, you've probably seen by the thumbnail and you'll see the still image afterwards, but this plug of debris, earwax, dead skin that I'm extracting, it's surrounded by fungal spores. So we immediately know this fungal infection is Aspergillus niger, and you will have a clearer view of the still image. You will also see some of these fungal spores here on this dead skin, and also some of that cotton wool structure. You can see that woolly structure at the top of the ear canal there. So the eardrum in the distance is nice and healthy. It's just the ear canal that's infected. So I've got the main plug out, and I'm now going to use a fine end suction probe to try and lift and remove as much of this dead skin as possible. Now, fungal ear infections can be a menace to treat. They need antifungal ear solution drops, and I think the normal, obviously it depends on which type of antifungal drops you have, but the most common one in the UK, it's typically used for 2 weeks, and then you do need to, with the fungal ear infection, with any type of infection, but more so with a fungal ear infection, always revisit your doctor or audiologist just to make sure it's cleared, because it has got a tendency of not reappearing. It can be somewhat dormant. It looks as though it's treated, but it can come back with a vengeance, and you may need to use the antifungal ear solution drops for a bit longer. So you can see I've removed a big sheet of skin there. Now, when I insert the endoscope, the eye clear scope, you can see there's a bit of condensation, a bit of misting, and that's because the ear temperature is raised because of this infection. So all the warm air, moisture, all the humidity in the ear, because of the raised temperature, it condenses on the tip of the endoscope. As soon as you go in with a sucker, because the sucker is quite cold, because when you do vacuum, it does reduce the temperature within the ear. The endoscope demists immediately because all the condensation from the tip of the endoscope transfers to the sucker. But even if I didn't have the sucker, if I just left the endoscope, this is one of the really great advantages of an endoscope compared to a traditional otoscope, for example, that may go in the ear, is with an endoscope, the rod lens system, so it's almost like a telescope. If you think about a telescope, it's a long piece of like a steel rod lens that enters the ear, and ours is about 5 centimeters in length. Surrounding the optics in that rod lens system is a series of optical light fibers, and that's what transfers the light into the ear and also transfers the image back from the ear into the endoscope, which is then viewable via the eyepiece. And those optical light fibers, they obviously conduct heat from the light source, so the kind of the torch, the light that we illuminate into the ear, they travel up and through these optical light fibers, and because they're surrounded all the way around the endoscope, the heat from the light is evenly distributed. Now, the endoscope itself never gets hot, so there was some. We generally get this a lot in the UK. There's always, for whatever reasons, obviously political reasons and for self-gain, but there's this myth going around that you can't use an endoscope to remove earwax because it's so hot and it'll scald the ear canal. Well, that's completely false. An endoscope, it evenly distributes the heat across the endoscope, and it never gets hot, and it's just enough warmth so the lens will, so when I went into the ear, it condenses because of the raised temperature and the humidity in the ear canal, and the lens of the endoscope is the coldest part. But after about 10-15 seconds, the lens itself will warm up because of the optical light fibres that are transferring the heat. Obviously, an endoscope is used for ear surgery, so if that was the case, well, they wouldn't do surgery with an endoscope. So we get a lot of this in the UK. It's obviously people got the vested interest, they use their own technologies and they want to promote that. So instead of talking good about what they've got, they like to talk ill about obviously other stuff. But that's the way of the world, unfortunately. So I'm just using the fine end here. I'm just trying to peel away as much dead skin as possible. We're not going to get every little last flake of skin. It's just not humanly possible. This patient has got a really sore spot. You'll see it in a moment. On a couple of occasions, I made contact with it, not with the fine end sucker, but with the endoscope itself, because I'm using the endoscope to stretch and straighten the ear, and on several occasions it made contact with the sore spot, and that sore spot was the patient themselves scratching their ear, and you'll see it in a moment. And we can see there just a bit of blistering there. We're trying to get, because the ear canal is inflamed, and we're trying to get some of this sticky fungus out the ear. So just to the left, you'll have a better view in a moment, I'm sure, but just at 9 o'clock, it's just out of view, but where I am now, just to the left there, this is the sore spot. And on a couple of occasions, when I was trying to remove dead skin from the right-hand side of the ear canal, I was having to position the endoscope towards the left, obviously, so there's working space for the fine end suction probe to enter the ear to the right. It was just making a bit of contact. It was slightly uncomfortable for the patient. At first, I didn't know what was the cause, because when the patient said it was slightly uncomfortable, the sucker wasn't making contact, well, with the canal wall at all. So, but then I realised it was just the endoscope making contact with the skin. So, now, potential causes of this fungal ear infection. Fungal ear infections are very common in hot and humid countries, so around the equator or exotic countries. They are also quite common, believe it or not, in winter months in the UK. And I think that's because in the winter months, we do have a lot of condensation in houses because you're putting the heating on, and it's just all our respiration when we breathe, and other humidity it can collect on the windows. And so in winter, when you're indoors, it's warm, but it's also a bit moist in the atmosphere, a bit humid, because the central heating's on, and they can cause a perfect breeding ground for infections. Also, if patients go to the sauna, for example, that I've had a lot of clients who developed fungal ear infections by going to the sauna, particularly when there's other people in there as well, because again, it's just a perfect breeding ground. It's warm and it's moist, and there's other people breathing in and out, and so some fungi can be transferred from one person to the next person. With this particular patient, it's perennial every year. They came this time last year as well with a fungal ear infection. So this is that sore spot just there where I am now, you can see. And this is the moment the patient said it was a bit uncomfortable. So I just wanted to test. I was just gently pressing it just to see if that was the bit, and it was. So we just tried to avoid that. So there's a bit of skin here. I'm just going to try and peel that away. So as I said, I'm not going to get every less speck. I'm very pleased with what I've done already, if the truth be told. So on what the patient said to me was, because it was the left ear again last time, and it did take a while. They had to have 2 courses of antifungal ear drops to kind of get on top of this. Their right ear, by the way, is fine. But they said in the office they're working, it is quite humid, and obviously in the winter months they've got a heater and it's towards their left ear, and there's no circulation in that room. So it's possible that the combination of the heat and humidity with the heater on the left side, it just helps. It's a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, as I said. Obviously, water as well. You want to avoid, if you've been watching my channel for long enough now, I probably bored you to death with my advice about avoiding water. But I've got absolutely no problems with my ears, touch wood. And I recently went on holiday and I didn't have my plugs. They left them in the hotel room, and I was in the swimming pool, and I really wanted to just get my head under water, and I did a naughty thing, and I did it. So it's a big slap on the wrist from me there. But I was very cautious prior to doing it. I thought, oh God, I just hope, you know, even afterwards there's a bit of regret. I hope I don't develop any infection, because water is really, really bad for the ear, guys. I was only in there for a moment, but I'm trying to justify it. I can't justify it, even if it was for a moment, it's the wrong thing. But yeah, water is really, really bad for the ear, so do be careful. I'm fortunate nothing happened, but, and to be honest, if you have 100 people and you get 100 people getting water in their ears, I don't know the exact figure, but just say 2 to 5% of those people develop an ear infection, but around that percentage will, and you just can't guarantee who it will be. And you may be someone who's quite fortunate, like you might always go into water and it's always been fine, but it just takes that one moment, that one occasion where you can develop an ear infection. We call it swimmer's ear. So when you get water in your ear, it leads to an infection. And it's a really then hard thing. In my experience, I noticed those patients are always more susceptible in the future to developing an ear infection. So after the summer months, when people return from their summer holidays, so they go to hot climates, they come back, and a lot of people develop swimmer's ear because they get their ears underwater. So that's the ear fungus. You can see all those black spores. It looks like caviar. It's got that appearance. So it's a big skin plug around the outside, and wax and debris all collected in a massive plug. And you can see those black fungal spurs. So that's called Aspergillus niger. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys, and you're all taking care, keeping well. Do stay tuned. I've got another really good video tomorrow. It's of a keratosis obturans removal and someone with a really, really narrow ear. So it's a really good one. Take care. Bye.